Have you ever been to a store like Walgreens and seen those cheap, weird earbuds that have shoelaces for cables? It's a bizarre niche in the audio market for sure, but one that does persist regardless of whether or not anyone actually buys them. You have to wonder who thought to themselves, what I really want is a pair of earphones that have shoelaces for cables, and invented these. What are they even intended for? Are they meant to be a fashion statement, or did some audio company come across a warehouse full of unused shoelaces and think of the perfect way to save money creating their new earbuds? Well, in any case, I happen to have obtained a pair of shoelace earbuds in my audiophile journey. These were courtesy of my mom, who actually got them as a freebie while ordering something from an online retailer called Chewbacca. I present to you the Xactly Krypton Wired Earbuds. Right off the bat, the packaging doesn't inspire the most confidence. These were clearly made to be promotional giveaways. You just gotta love how they try to spin it as some kind of environmentalist initiative too. I always love fake corporate greenwashing bullshit, like the Sony Greenheart packaging that came with the MH1's ear tips. Yeah, bet this product is really environmental safe with all the non-biodegradable plastic and the lead solder. Oh hey, nice little plastic tray there, like that's totally not gonna get shoved up a sea turtle's asshole or anything. Oh, what's that? There's a true wireless version of these too? Well, I sure hope they support replaceable batteries, otherwise they'll just be e-waste floating in the ocean a year from now. Anyway, these in-ear monitors are typically priced at $11.95 according to my research. There's some bulk sellers offering 25 units for $40, which averages to around $1.60 per IEM. All you need to know is that the Xactly Krypton Wired IEM is pretty much as cheap gets. The fact that online retailers can offer them as promotional giveaways and this company somehow still sees profit margins is proof of that. So, how does the Xactly Krypton sound? Well, calling it the crap ton would be a bit lowbrow, if apt. I suppose it would also be too predictable to say that it should be called kryptonite because it's so bad that it could kill Superman. I'll instead subvert expectations and mention that the paint most likely contains Superman's second most deadly weakness, lead. Okay, so yeah, the Xactly Krypton sounds exactly as bad as you've probably always imagined when seeing those Walgreens shoelace earbuds. They sound straight up broken. I have to imagine this is how someone with severe hearing damage hears the world. It's just ridiculously muffled with no detail at all. Of course, my subjective opinion is not nearly thorough enough to explain what's really wrong with the Xactly Krypton. It's time to consult my tried and true 2 ears, 2 sources Planck-Sanalski's tone generator normalized at 1000 Hz method. This time, I'll be using the 7 Hz Salnotes Zero as the neutral reference. Looking at this rough mock-up graph, we can see an odd trend that's quite different from any other cheap headphone or earphone I've reviewed in the past. It turns out that the mid-range measurements are actually really spot on from 300 Hz all the way to 4000 Hz. That's some stunning accuracy, certainly more so than the drop-cross JVC Ha FDX1 that was hyped by shills a few years back for whatever reason. The bass is not really so bad, just a roughly 4 decibel shelf centered at 200 Hz, maybe a little bleedy into the mids, but nowhere near as bad as the stock Sony MH1 was. So where does the Xactly Krypton go wrong in the frequency response measurements? Well, unveiling the other half of the graph, we can clearly see a trend. Where the hell did all the treble go? It's actually baffling. I've never quite seen anything like this before. It's so good, then suddenly, BAM! Everything past 5 kHz is down 13 decibels. That means the treble is over 4 times quieter than the bass and mid-range, resulting in the most subjectively low-resolution sound imaginable. Is this a good time to mention that Xactly is a company that's most well known for manufacturing insulated water bottles? I just can't figure out what's causing this. Other cheap crap I've looked at exhibited notable flaws in the drivers, such as the massive resonant peaks on the Dollar Tree in-ears or the giant phase cancellation valleys on the bass jack superior. But this? We're talking about a near-ideal frequency response that was butchered by a massive treble recession. The dip is far too consistent to be any kind of phase cancellation caused by damping, so what's the deal? I thought maybe the engineers might have installed a passive low-pass filter in the circuitry centered at 4 kHz as a cheap, lazy way of achieving the desired bass response. That just seems unlikely though, given that the Xactly Kryptons are literal giveaway earphones made from the cheapest possible materials. If you've been watching my audio reviews up until this point, then you know I'm not one to give up on the worst headphones and earphones out there. I'm a firm believer that EQ can fix 99.9% of the flawed products out there, with that last 0.1% being the Magnavox Hi-Fis of the world that just have too much latent distortion and physical design flaws to save. Since the Xactly Kryptons measures so closely to the 7Hz Salnotes Zero up until 5 kHz, I'd figure I'd save some time EQing by ear and instead use AutoEQ's translation feature. Now I have had problems in the past with AutoEQ and in-ears, which is why I never made any interactive in-ear blind tests. With my mock-up measurements though, all the differences are plotted entirely in relation to the Super Reviewer measurements of the Salnotes Zero. It had to work this time, right? I'm pleased to report that this AutoEQ preset was a complete success. The Krypton sounded identical to the Salnotes Zero. The generated graph showed a bit of a resonance at 10 kHz, but that seems to be an artifact. I didn't actually hear it when listening to the sine sweeps. With this EQ preset, the Krypton goes from one of the figuratively lowest resolution audio devices I've heard to an outstanding studio monitor quality earphone capable of hearing just about any detail in music. It's probably the most stunning transformation I've ever heard, actually. The lack of any narrow resonances in the spectral balance seems to be the key for a seamless EQ translation. I doubt the typical peaky budget Chi-Fi would have performed as well. As far as I can tell, there's virtually no audible distortion either when listening at regular volume, and the channel balance is fairly consistent aside from around 10 kHz. Granted, even after AutoEQ, the Krypton still has that deficiency in the upper treble like the Salnotes Zero has, but I'll take what I can get. Of course, this wouldn't be a proper Shoelace earbud review without talking about the main selling point. How are the Xactly Krypton's non-removable shoelace cables? Well, they're a bit narrower in form factor than some of the ones I've seen in Google image searches. It's more like one of those allegedly reinforced USB-C charging cables if you own one of those. While this material might work for charging phones, I can't say I'd ever prefer this over traditional rubber cables for something hanging out of my ears for hours at a time. The material is very, very stiff and prone to tangling. Worse, it's very microphonic too. Move your head even the slightest and you'll hear the swishing of the cables drown out your music. Again, I seriously question whoever had the bright idea to take shoelace material and make IEM cables out of them. It's just universally inferior to nearly everything I've owned, including crap from Dollar Tree. One last cable-related bit to point out is that it has an inline remote for controlling the volume, pausing, and skipping to the next track. All these features work as intended on Android phones, thankfully, but I've just never seen the need for them. It seems much more awkward to mess with something dangling right under your chin than to just reach in your pocket for your phone. You also take the risk of breaking the seal. Speaking of which, I find the shape of the Krypton to be quite problematic for keeping a consistent seal. They're not intended to be hooked over the ears, so that's personally a deal breaker for me. As for the extra bits, I was surprised to see that the Xactly Krypton came with a little drawstring pouch. I thought, if nothing else, at least this junk freebie could provide me with a decent little vessel to carry my much better Salnotes Zero around in my pocket. Well, unfortunately, I can't even have that. Notice how there's no string on this drawstring pouch? Yeah, after putting it in my pocket and going out with it just one time, the knots on the ends of the string came undone and the string fell out. Now I can't even put the damn string back in unless I get a pair of tweezers and force them in or whatever. Good lord, can I salvage anything from these shitty freebies? Well, actually, I can. You see these nice little white ear tips? It turns out they're the exact same kind of ear tips used on the 7Hz Salnotes Zero and a nice neutral white color. This was a godsend for me, as I could not stand that sickly Tweety Bird yellow color that the largest ear tips came in. I happen to really like that black and white aesthetic too. I'm sure that the white color will get stained with nasty earwax pretty quickly, but whatever. A set of these ear tips alone probably would have cost me $8 on Amazon, and these were literally free. In conclusion, the Xactly Krypton is exactly the ton of crap I imagined when I first saw those Shoelace Walgreens earbuds. It's a muffled sounding mess with a stiff microphonic cable and a self-destructing pouch. If nothing else, I got another valuable opportunity to experiment with parametric equalization out of the Xactly Krypton. It just goes to show that there are no bad drivers, merely bad frequency responses that can almost always be fixed with enough EQ. If you're given the choice to get these for free, then why not take up the offer? Slap that AutoEQ preset into Wavelet on your phone and you'll have a decent disposable pair of in-ears for the gym. However, for $12 the Xactly Krypton is a complete ripoff. You can get some decent Chi-Fi in-ears for only $3 more, and for $8 more you can get the 7Hz Salnotes Zero, which sounds just like an IEM version of the Sennheiser HD650, but without the sub-bass roll-off or veiled mid-treble. Thank you for watching.